you all for coming. It's a lot of thanks right now. Very much appreciated, and yeah, I think I'll just dive right into it. So, sort of extrapolating from what I had written before, often as an artist you're presented with a blank slate, and then you get the opportunity to fill that slate with what you please to. And for me, not only conceptually but also physically, I find my world to be very much about integration, and that's different ideas and different materials. So I studied textiles, and with that weaving process that comes to was that integration of threads and colors and patterns, and I wanted to apply that to my artistic practice. Sorry. So I've applied weaving to it, and to me it is about, in current times I find there are kind of these two opposing views and sides. And what I mean, in a sense, if we have a modernist view, a very relative view on things, and a postmodern view, and a very an ultimate truth to a sense. So do we have a larger truth, or is it an individual one? And I find currently that it is both. We're aware that there is a larger truth. So you have a group of people in a country or a place that abide by a particular set of values or a system of beliefs. As you do, each individual is different within that. So how do we cope with both of these sides coming together? And for me, I ruminate over these ideas through the process of weaving. I like taking post-industrial materials and breaking them down. As a child, I remember my father saying that you're really good at taking stuff apart, not so good at putting it back together. His watches, his tools, equipment, and things like that. And so I like taking something what was and reintroducing it. That malleability of not only the product, but also the idea that this world is malleable. These rules that we have, whether they're social or legislative, we can bend and change and alter, and they're not set in stone, thankfully enough. And I think of my childhood, and when I do a large-scale piece like this, I was lucky enough to be in the States. We are very big on marching bands. And I was the biggest nerd for 4 years. I did marching band. I was so proud of that time in my life. Actually, it took me to London for the millennium, and we got to play in the New Year's Day parade for the Queen. And it was incredible. And I think what that really instilled in me was a sense of individuality, that I needed to know my part, I needed to memorize my music, know my patterns in my routine and my movements, but also I was part of something much greater at the same time. And so that's what those two sides are about, with it being a group or an individual, recognizing both of those, and then you get something completely different. You get a bit of magic, which I think happens. I mean, if you're on YouTube, Google it, Marching Bands US. It is an incredible thing. And that coming together of all those individuals, recognizing their individuality, but letting go of their ego for a larger and greater stance. So when I do works like these, or even smaller works, it is about these minute parts that accumulate into something much larger than their individual aspect, but still wanting for you to pay attention to each little color or layer that occurs. So it is this kind of back and forth pulling that occurs, and maybe at some point that back and forth can propel us forward instead of oscillating between the two sides. So that's what I look to achieve when I'm doing work, and I think of, you know, and I listed here in science that collider when the particles are coming together. To me, you know, life is about magic. And if it's cold and boring and rigid, there's no magic in the world. And life is so short and fragile that it should be about magic. And in nature, I so enjoy the dawn and the twilight, which to me is that gray area. You know, it's not man and woman, it's something between. It's not gay and straight, it's not art or concept and craft. It's these coming together of these two opposing sides, and when they collide, you get something like this, you know? Which I I really enjoy bringing those together. I recently was in Bali, and I got to watch Russian television, and that was an eye-opener. And being from the States, the majority of our news villainizes Russia, totalitarian, it's communistic, it's dreadful people. And to see the opposing side have their proof, their validation, their scholars, their politicians condemning us as America, I couldn't pick a side. I found myself no longer with my own country, nor did I find myself with Russia. I found myself as a person, just as a being, without these opposing sides, and I knew the entirety of what was being presented to me. I understood the whole of it. And I think that these two opposing things bring you that whole. And sometimes they can be different. I imagine in the States, I was reading an article on how the environment is always an issue and a topic. And you have the very strong liberals who see it, their dogma is science. That science, we're doing terrible things to the environment. And when you go to the other end of the extreme, you have the conservatives, who are mostly religious-based, and this is God's world. Well, both extremes are actually fighting for the same cause. They want the environment to be safe. One says that it's for the better of humanity in the future, and science is proving that. And the other says that this is our explanation for existence. This is God's country, and we should maintain it. So, if anything you take from this evening, take that sense of, in your life, is it paper or plastic? Is it right or wrong? Or can it be something else? Can we live in the gray? Which can be scary at times, but there's just a rainbow of color within that gray. So I'd like to share with you, while I do these, I write quite a bit of poetry. And I've got a poem tonight that taps into the artistic process. And I'd like to share that, and then I'll give some thanks, and that'll be it. This is called A Frozen Pool of Quicksand's Change. Our beginnings never know our ends. So why trouble with intent to make amends? As Ion doesn't know his skill, and to stamper it with logic is to kill. For the unknown we fear, this crazed wisdom of Lear. For in another condition of light one can see the strange moment of shaping of what is yet to be. A moment of fitting hallucination amidst the avalanche of creation. These forms unattached to their maker, who's unable to define, to play dictator. For never ending is the blind man's bluff, as finally you find you have a composition of stuff. Flesh and blood upon your hands, a character of its own, indestructible it stands. For the finished is a spectacle at full range, a frozen pool of quicksand's change. I'd like to give a special thanks to Poppy at fehily Contemporary, manager, and Bernie Albrando, who this wouldn't be possible. So thank you both, ladies. And thank you.